Welcome back to IGCSE Science Academy, where science made simple and clear. Today we are diving into another topic of the most vital system in the human body, the gaseous exchange. Think about this right now. Without you even trying, your body is performing a high-stake swap. It's bringing in the oxygen required for every single cell to function and getting rid of the waste carbon dioxide that would otherwise poison you. But how does that air actually get from the room around you into your bloodstream? The topic sits at the intersection of three major biological pillars: respiration, the chemical process in cells that actually uses the oxygen; gas exchange, the physical swap of gases in the lungs; and transport, how the circulatory system carries these gases to where they need to go. Over the next several slides, we are going to look at the anatomy of the lungs from the trachea down to the microscopic alveoli. We will examine the mechanics of how the breathe, ventilation, and importantly for your IGCSE exam, the specific features that make our lungs so efficient and diffusing gases. Let's get started. The learning objectives today we will cover are: investigate differences in composition between inspired and expired air, describe the composition of inspired as expired air, oxygen, carbon dioxide, water vapor, understand how to test for carbon dioxide using lime water, investigate the effect of physical activity on breathing rate and depth, trace the journey of an oxygen molecules through the respiratory system. Now let's look at what actually happens to the air once it enters our lungs by comparing the air we breathe in, inspired air, to the air we breathe out, expired air. We can see exactly what the body is using and what is producing. There are three major shifts you need to know for your IGCSE exam. Oxygen. Here are the gas components: inspired air percentage, expired air percentage, and change. The first gas component, that is oxygen. We breathe in about 21% of oxygen but only breathe out 16% of oxygen. That 5% decrease happens because the oxygen is absorbed into the blood to fuel cellular respiration. Second gas component, that is carbon dioxide. This is the most dramatic change. It jumps from a tiny 0.4% to 4%. 800x increased. This is because carbon dioxide is a waste product produced by our cells during respiration. Fourth component, that is water vapor. This increases from a variable low to being fully saturated. This happens because water evaporates from the moist surfaces inside our lungs. You will notice nitrogen stays exactly the same at 78%. Our bodies don't use nitrogen from the air, so what goes is simply comes right back out. Here are some key points. Oxygen decreases because it's absorbed into the blood for cellular respiration. Carbon dioxide increases because it's a waste product of respiration produced by cells. Water vapor increases due to evaporation from moist lung surfaces. In short, we take in oxygen, dump out carbon dioxide, and add some moisture along the way. Next, let's look at the specific structures in the lungs that make this swap possible. In this slide here is the lime water experiment, which we will perform in our next video. Let's discuss how to perform this experiment. Testing for carbon dioxide, the lime water experiment. When we compare the air we breathe into the air we breathe out, we see three major changes. First change is oxygen drops from 21% to 16% because it is absorbed into the blood for cellular respiration. Second is carbon dioxide. This is the big one. It increases 100 times, jumping from 0.04% to 4%. as cells dump their waste. Water vapor it goes from variable to saturated as it evaporates from the moist surface of our lungs. The lime water experiment to see this carbon dioxide increases in action we use the lime water experiment. Lime water is a clear solution of calcium hydroxide that turns cloudy or milky when carbon dioxide is present. In this setup, we need the apparatus, two boiling tubes, lime water, calcium hydroxide solution, two delivery tubes, straws, rubber bugs or stoppers. The method is: first set up two test tubes with lime water. Second, tube A, breathe in through the straw, inspired air. 3, tube B, breathe out through the straw, expired air. 4, observe color changes in both tubes. Then 5, record observations and compare. Results and observations. Tube A, inspired air, lime water remains clear, very little carbon dioxide present, only 0.04%. In tube A, when you breathe in through the straw, the lime water remains clear because there is a very little carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Tube B, expired air, lime water turns cloudy, milky, carbon dioxide present 4% concentration. When you breathe out through the straw, the lime water turns cloudy immediately. This provides clear visual proof that expired air contains significantly more carbon dioxide, confirming it is a byproduct of respiration. We have seen that lime water turns cloudy when we breathe into it, but why does that happen? Let's look at the chemistry behind this reaction. The scientific name for lime water is calcium hydroxide, or CaOH2. This is the chemical formula for calcium hydroxide. When we bubble carbon dioxide through it, a chemical reaction occurs, and the chemical reaction is calcium hydroxide plus carbon dioxide. This is the reactant, and what we get, the product, calcium carbonate plus water. So why does it look milky? The start: lime water is a solution of calcium hydroxide. It's a clear, colorless. Lime water begins as a clear, colorless solution. When carbon dioxide is bubbled through, it reacts with the calcium hydroxide. This forms calcium carbonate, which is insoluble, does not dissolve. The calcium carbonate appears as a white precipitate, making the solution cloudy. This is this reaction is the gold standard test for carbon dioxide. If it doesn't turn cloudy, carbon dioxide isn't there in high enough concentration. If it does, you have confirmed its presence. Effects of physical activity on breathing. We have looked at the chemistry of a single breath, but how does our breathing change when we move? Let's compare our bodies at rest versus during exercise. When we are at rest, like we are right now, our breathing is rhythmic and easy. Your rate is likely between 12 to 16 breaths per minute. Your diaphragm and intercostal muscles are relatively relaxed. You are talking in shallow breaths, which we call a small tidal volume. Here are the points. At rest, breathing rate 12 to 16 breaths per minute, shallow breathing, small tidal volume, relaxed diaphragm and intercostal muscles, sufficient oxygen for normal metabolism. However, once we start exercising, everything ramps up. Our breathing rate can skyrocket to 30 to 60 breaths per minute. Our breathing becomes much deeper to move a larger volume of air. Our muscles are now actively contracting to force that air in and out. During exercise, breathing rate 30 to 60 breaths per minute. Deep breathing, large tidal volume, active muscle contraction, increased oxygen demand by muscles. Why does this happen? It's all about supply and demand. Oxygen demand. Your muscle cells need more oxygen for increased cellular respiration to release the energy you need to keep moving. Muscle cells need more oxygen for increased cellular respiration to release energy. Muscle cells produce more carbon dioxide as a waste product during respiration. Faster, deeper breathing brings in more oxygen and removes more carbon dioxide quickly. Brain detects increased carbon dioxide levels in blood and signals breathing muscles to work harder. Investigating breathing rate changes. We have discussed the theory behind exercise and breathing. Now let's look at the actual data. This experiment allows us to quantify exactly how much our breathing rate spikes and how long it takes for our body to return its resting state. Here is the experimental method. To collect this data, we follow a simple 5-step process. First is baseline. We count the number of breaths taken in 1 minute while sitting still. Measure breathing rate at rest, count breaths for 1 minute. Second is perform exercise or exertion. Then we perform vigorous exercise like running or jumping jacks for 2 to 5 minutes. 3 is immediate measurement, immediately measures breathing rate after exercise. 4 is recovery phase, measuring breathing rate every minute during recovery. 5 is data visualization. Finally, we plot these results on a graph to see the recovery curve. Looking at the graph on the right, we can see three critical trends: rate increases, depth increases, and recovery notice. So first is rate increases. In this example, the rate jumps from 14 breath per minute at rest to 42 breaths per minute. Immediately after exercise, this is a 3x increases, means 3 times increases. Then depth increases. It isn't just speed, the tidal volume, the amount of the air per breath rate rises significantly from about 500 ml to 300 ml. Recovery. Breathing gradually returns to normal over 5 minutes. So as you can see in the graph, from 14 to 15 at rest, it's a 14. After exercise, it's on 42. After 1 minute 35, then 28, then 22, then 18, then 15. The recovery period is a great indicator of fitness. Generally, the more fit an individual is, the faster their breathing rate will return to the resting baseline because their heart and lungs are most efficient at clearly the oxygen depths created during exercise. Now let's discuss about the pathway of the human respiratory system and the definitions of each component. The human respiratory system, components and its functions. The first component is nose and mouth. Air enters filtered, warmed, and moistened in the nose and mouth. Trachea, which is also called windpipe, it is C-shaped cartilage wings prevent collapse. Bronchi, two tubes branching into each lungs. Bronchioles, smaller tubes branching throughout lungs. Alveoli, tiny air sacs, site of gas exchange. Diaphragm, muscle sheets below lungs, controls breathing. Intercostal muscles between ribs aid breathing movements. Respiratory system pathway. If we are filling out the follow chart on the right side of the slide, the correct order for the air's journey is: the first is mouth and nose, trachea, bronchi, then alveoli, then diaphragm, and then intercostal muscles. This slide focuses on the alveoli, the site of gas exchange, which are the specialized structures where gas exchange occurs in the human body. Here is the breakdown of the content. Structure and adaptations. The alveoli are perfectly designed for efficient gas exchange through several key features: large surface area. There are approximately 300 million alveoli providing a massive area for gases to move. Thin walls. The walls are only 1 cell thick, which minimize the distance gases must travel short diffusion distance. Moist lining. Gases dissolve for efficient diffusion. This allows gases to dissolve, which is necessary for them to diffuse across the membrane. Rich blood supply. Network of capillaries maintains concentration gradient. A vast network of capillaries ensures that blood is constantly moving, maintaining a steep concentration gradient. Good ventilation. Breathing movements bring fresh air constantly. Regular breathing movements ensure that old air is replaced with fresh air high in oxygen. So these are the structure and adaptations of alveoli. The detailed structure and adaptations are already discussed in our previous video. You can watch from there. Gas exchange process. The entire process relies on diffusion, which is the movement of molecules from an area of higher concentration to an area of low concentration. So first is oxygen movement, alveolus to blood, high concentration of oxygen to low concentration of oxygen, diffusion down concentration gradient. So move from the alveoli high concentration into the blood to the low concentration. Carbon dioxide movement moves from the blood high concentration into the alveoli low concentration to be exhaled. Blood to alveolus high concentration carbon dioxide to low concentration carbon dioxide, diffusion down concentration gradient. So diffusion, what diffusion is? Movement of molecules from high to low concentration. Now let's discuss about journey of an oxygen molecule from air to bloodstream, a molecular adventure. The path follows a specific 8-step sequences from the outside world to the blood. First is inhalation. Air enters via nose-mouth where it is filtered, warm and moistened. Number 2, down the trachea. The molecules travel down the windpipe held open by C-shaped cartilage. 3 is bronchi split. The path splits into the left or right lung. The paths divide. I take the left bronchus into the left lung, branching like a tree. 4 is through bronchioles. The tubes get progressively smaller. I follow through progressively smaller tubes, getting closer to my destination. 5 is alveolus arrival. The molecules reaches the tiny air sacs. I reach a tiny air sac and alveolus, its thin, moist wall is just 1 cell thick. Number 6, diffusion. Oxygen moves through the thin alveolar and capillary walls. I pass through the alveolar wall and capillary wall by diffusion from high to low concentration. 7 is into blood plasma. The molecules enter the liquid part of the blood. I am now in the blood. I quickly move from plasma into a red blood cell. It is binding to hemoglobin. I enters the red blood cell to form oxygenated blood or oxyhemoglobin for transport. The alveoli are highly adapted to make this journey efficient. A simple intro that it starts with inhalation as we breathe in. The nose filters in warm the air, then we head down the trachea which stays open thanks to those 3 C-shaped cartilage rings. Think of them like the structural beams of a tunnel. From there, we hit the bronchi and branch off into the lungs, moving through smaller and smaller bronchioles. Finally, we arrive at the alveoli. These are the tiny air sacs at the end of the line. But why here? Why not the trachea? Because the alveoli are built for speed. Look at this adaptation first. There are millions of them creating a massive surface area. Second, the walls are 1 cell thick. Imagine trying to walk through a massive brick wall versus a single sheet of paper. There's the short diffusion distance in action. Plus, they are moist, so gases can dissolve, and they are surrounded by a rich blood supply that keeps the traffic moving. We have talked about how oxygen gets into our blood, but why does our body want it so badly? The answer is simple: energy. Our cells are like tiny engines and they need fuel to run. This process is called cellular respiration. Think of oxygen as the key that unlocks energy. Its job is to break down glucose sugar from our food to release the energy stored inside its chemical bound. Without oxygen, the engine stalls and we cannot make enough power. Here is the chemical equation for the cellular respiration: that glucose plus oxygen, which makes carbon dioxide, water, and energy in the form of ATP. The goal of this whole process to create ATP, this is the cellular currency that powers everything we do. Whether we are running a marathon, growing taller, or even thinking about what to have for dinner, we are using ATP produced by respiration. So now the carbon dioxide, which is the waste product, every engine has an exhaust pipe. In this case, when we break down glucose to produce carbon dioxide as a waste product, this carbon dioxide is transported back to our lungs through our blood so we can breathe it out and get it out of our system. So to sum it up, we breathe it to unlock energy, ATP, and we breathe out to get rid of the waste carbon dioxide. It's the ultimate trade-off that keeps us alive. Oxygen's role. The role of oxygen is to break down glucose molecules to release energy stored in chemical bonds. Carbon dioxide production, waste product that must be removed, transported in blood back to lungs. Energy, that is ATP, powers all life processes: movement, growth, cell division, protein synthesis. Let's wrap up our lesson by these summary key points. Summary key points to remember. Expired air has less oxygen, 16% is 21%, and more carbon dioxide, 4% to 0.04%. Line test turns cloudy with carbon dioxide, proves respiration. Exercise increases breathing rate and depth for oxygen-carbon dioxide exchange. Alveoli are adapted, light surface area, thin walls, moist, good blood supply. Gas exchange occurs by diffusion down concentration gradient. Oxygen binds to hemoglobin in red blood cells for transport. Cellular respiration, glucose plus oxygen makes carbon dioxide, water, and energy. I hope this made the respiratory system a little easier to breathe through. Keep studying, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next lesson. For more videos, don't forget to subscribe the channel IGCSE Science Academy. Thank you and stay tuned.